Just for those that don't know me, my name is James Sampson. I'm based up in Singapore, but I look after DataZoo for the region, and I've been kind of doing that for the last 5 years, but been in DataZoo for 9, so kind of a long time kind of seeing global programmatic markets evolve. I've been coming down here for 5 years, so I love it, and I know good to see some familiar faces in the room. But I thought today that we'd speak a little bit about kind of what's happening with TV in Australia, which is pretty remarkable, actually. You know, even our kind of global CEO says, like, what's going on in Australia? Because in the U.S., like, TV is like the thing, but Australia is like really not far behind, and in some cases actually a bit more advanced. So you kind of are sitting in a market that from a consumer perspective and a marketing perspective is really like pushing the edge of innovation here. So I thought we'd kind of talk about how technology is changing the world of TV, and you know, the TV is kind of an umbrella term. So we thought we'd kind of go over a few things, maybe answer a few questions in your mind that you might have. Like, I keep hearing these kind of different terms about advanced TV or programmatic TV. Like, what does that actually mean? Why should I care about it if I need to kind of use it for my job? What advanced TV solutions are actually available in Australia? And then how can I kind of use it to fulfill different marketing objectives I might have? So hopefully if you've got some of those questions, we'll get to them in the next 20, 25 minutes. Might be a little fast, but if there's anything afterwards, let me know. So I'm also going to kind of talk a little bit from, I'll kind of mix in stats from like what's happening globally, what's happening across Asia Pacific, and then more specifically in AU. So hopefully it's easy to follow, but you know, it's you find the stats wherever you can find them. But generally, you know, we're actually in a good place in TV. Like, everybody's kind of like down on TV. Like, linear viewership is down, but actually, like, people are watching more TV than ever. Like, just think in your personal lives, you're just kind of watching it in a different way. But like, all these new services are coming out that are actually bringing like more TV shows, not just repurposing the ones that you were watching on linear. Locally produced content is on the rise. So country by country, you're seeing like more and more locally relevant content being produced in sort of a more efficient way and getting distributed out. But people are actually watching less live linear TV, as I'm sure you all know in your daily lives. It's you know, kind of sitting down and watching something at 9 o'clock at night, just because that's when it's on, is kind of like a thing of the past, especially for most people who are under 60. We'll show that in a second. Sorry, hope that didn't insult anybody. But you know, generally also, you know, big challenge with TV buying and planning and measurement is like, people are watching more TV, but that's not what it looks like when you look at all these like ratings and how people are trading the media plans. So like, the measurement hasn't really stayed in pace with sort of the innovation and changes of the way people are consuming content. It seems like in Australia, there's actually like a big initiative from OzTam and some of these other companies to really do this. But it's still like, you know, people are going to keep changing the way they're consuming content, and measurement's always going to lag. But it's really lagging when it comes to like fragmented TV consumption. And then generally, AVOD, this kind of term, advertising supported video on demand. So Netflix and those guys are called SVOD, subscription video on demand, where you pay. AVOD is ad supported. But actually across APAC, it's becoming like a big thing, and it's going to actually overtake the US when it comes to like ad spend going into these environments. So TV audiences are fragmenting. These are US shows. But you'll see, like, you know, that's the average age of people watching TV shows, like the old way. Not really like the key demographic for marketers. Not really super easy to find. You know, argue it one way or the other. But generally, like, yeah, people that are older are kind of still doing this. But if you kind of want to find like your kind of more desirable audiences when it comes to a marketing perspective, you know, you've got to kind of find them elsewhere. So more and more of the content is being watched on connected TV. So like, people were starting to watch this. Oh, I'm gonna mess up here, huh? So people, you know, were watching a lot of this kind of content from the big broadcasters on like phones and PCs when it started. But now more and more people are just getting kind of comfortable watching this on like the big screen at home. And those experiences are getting better, and it's getting easier, and just more and more of the population is starting to do this. So we'll kind of go into like what all these like terms mean, but generally, like, in Australia, you're actually seeing a super high percentage of the population accessing ad-supported video on demand quite regularly. So it's not just people watching Netflix or places where you can't put advertising, yet, but these are actually places that you can actually reach people with ad messages pretty frequently, unlike the premium environment. So this is sort of what TV looks like nowadays when you kind of use the term TV. You sort of break it up into live watching. So I'm watching something. Usually it's like sports and news, sometimes TV shows as they're actually airing. And then there's more video on demand or catch-up TV and stuff like that. But when you start to break it down, like you can kind of access this content in so many different places that's just becoming like the norm for consumers. But really, like, the heat has sort of been around like this on-demand side of things, but you're seeing more and more people actually watching like live linear broadcasts through different devices than like their set-top box at home or through the traditional TV at home. And so suddenly, from a consumer perspective, they're having a great time. Like I can access my content anywhere, and it's getting easier and easier. Some of those restrictions are going away. I can actually do it cheaper than I used to do it when it comes to subscriptions. And I can kind of watch whatever I want, whenever I want, wherever I want. So that's how the consumers like it. And the marketers are having a bit of challenge. They're still kind of seeing things in these like weird device silos where it's like planning and buying and measurement and reaching people and audiences. Like all this stuff is still kind of siloed device by device. And when it comes to kind of like executing campaigns or measuring campaigns or whatever you want to do, it's still sort of a bit clunky compared to where like as a human, you know what you're doing every day, but trying to kind of reach you as a human from a marketing perspective is challenging. And so this is what happens. You get this, you get these different terms, and you might actually get confused, which is easy to happen in our industry. There's a lot of terminology being thrown around. But generally, there's sort of the term programmatic TV or advanced TV. This is actually, you have to kind of dig in one step further and say, like, what are you actually talking about? Because the term actually can mean different things to whoever's talking about it. So try to kind of summarize here the different forms of advanced TV, and I'll try to explain a little bit quickly what each one does. But generally, like, think of advanced TV as an umbrella term, and there's different ways that you can actually reach people through this. I'll kind of go from left to right here, and it kind of goes from like for those of you who are kind of digital marketers in the room, it's kind of more familiar, and then as you go to the right, it gets into more like traditional TV. But all of it's being disrupted and innovated, which is giving you guys new opportunities to reach people more holistically, which we'll get to in a second. So there's the concept of like, I'll just say like channel 10. You can access channel 10's apps through the phone, through the tablet, through a PC, through connected TV, through some of these different streaming boxes connected to your TV. There's all these ways that you can actually consume that content. Generally, like in Australia especially, but it's kind of catching on around the world. You do good marketing, guys, whoever's doing this. But the term BVOD, have you guys heard that term? So it stands for broadcast video on demand. This is sort of like elevating the it's real broadcast quality content here. It's not just somebody watching random UGC, but you kind of hear this term BVOD. That term BVOD can kind of reference like all these different devices. It's just kind of like the content is being consumed in any of these places. Sometimes you'll hear the word OTT, which is over the top. This is also just kind of the access of content kind of everywhere, but it may be kind of more of a umbrella term that's not just specifically like high quality broadcast level content. But the idea is actually like through these kind of very digital devices, you can kind of reach people with like the digital tactics that you typically use. So targeting, measurement, metrics, all that stuff kind of looks similar to what you're doing in sort of your normal digital campaigns. It gets a little bit harder when you move from like a personal device to a family device or a shared device. But there's kind of technology out there now to make that easier, which we'll get to. But then you move more into like the linear side of things. And in some markets, this is market by market, but you have something called addressable TV. This is the Foxtel box that you have at home. In different markets, that Foxtel box is actually like two-way enabled. So you can actually like dynamically insert ads into the box, like household by household by household versus, that's not in Australia, but you can kind of do that. And what that means is you can actually take audiences in the digital world and target them into their set-top box in like the live linear environment. We do that in Korea, for instance, some in the US, some in the UK. And then there's something you do have here in market is called programmatic linear. This is the idea where it's still broadcast, so you can't target household by household, but you're kind of using more and more digital data to do the planning around what TV shows and spots to buy. And you kind of have different options where you can use more advanced audiences than what you typically could do before to come up with that plan and schedule. You're still kind of like blasting out to everybody, but you're making a better decision about what TV shows and spots to buy based on the audience that you want to reach. So you kind of hear about that from MCN and Foxtel here, which seems to be kind of doing pretty well. But generally, like what I'm going to focus on today is like this area on the left, and especially connected TV, which has a ton of heat on it here as well. Hopefully I didn't confuse you guys more, but like usually when you hear the term programmatic TV, advanced TV, just like ask what are you actually talking about, because you kind of have to go a little bit deeper. So that's kind of where TV's at as far as like consumption, and I think like you're going to see more and more people just shifting away from like live linear to some form of digital streaming. That's kind of like happening globally, but really happening here. You can kind of reach a pretty high percentage of the population through ad-supported connected TV today, and that'll only get better. Pretty soon you'll have to reach people through their watches and their smart screens on their whatever Amazon device. But like TV is kind of the place now. So, but that kind of the challenge there is like consumers are going to get more fragmented. How do you kind of reaggregate them and use them for like planning and measurement and targeting and all that good stuff? And so from a marketer perspective, like here's kind of what you want. You're like, okay, like my consumers are kind of going to be using more and more screens and more devices. I'm going to be able to collect information from all of those different touch points, based on consumer usage, what I know about them, how they interact with your brands, how they interact with the outside world. How do I sort of like group all that stuff into like one consumer profile? Kind of like what Gil was showing earlier, like how do you actually get to like that consumer view? You can actually do that now. And marketers are saying, wait, actually this is like way better than before. And this is sort of something that's been happening for the last 2 or 3 years. But like, how do I kind of take all the information I get like touch point by touch point by touch point, group it all up into one user profile, and then kind of use that data everywhere? And ideally, this is where marketers want to get to, and it's kind of cool because it's available today. But can I group people into people and group those people into households that they live in, use the kind of information that I might be able to collect from either my own business, so your own business, your client's business, second-party data sources in the market, which are growing pretty well, and then third-party data, and all these different places where you can kind of get info. How do I kind of use that and just kind of like reach people everywhere? This kind of audience everywhere mentality, instead of having to kind of do it like silo by silo, device by device. And then how do I measure that stuff kind of apples to apples? So deduplicated reach and frequency, like real deduplicated reach and frequency. Digital engagement, real ROI. Are people that are seeing TV ads going into my store, geofencing? Are they buying something from my website? Are they signing up for my list? Like whatever you kind of care about. How do you kind of make sure like the ads that people see here are relevant to them? And then did they actually do what you wanted them to do? Like this is kind of where people have been working towards, but it's actually a reality today. So that's the ideal state. People are kind of getting there. The kind of processes around actually executing this way from a planning perspective and an agency perspective and measurement perspective, like that takes time. Kind of like the measurement side, it kind of lags a little bit. Like you can do this today, but just getting everybody kind of aligned to thinking this way is sort of the next step, I think, in terms of being able to execute this on behalf of your clients. So what's available in Australia? I saw some head nods when I asked like BVOD. I'm assuming like some people have been kind of playing with this stuff. Maybe some people haven't. But generally, you have like a very robust market when it comes to advanced TV. The broadcasters especially are like doing an amazing job, more so than in other markets, of getting people to actually like watch their content in these new environments. So typically it's like clunky in other countries, but here like the free-to-air broadcasters are so strong that you can just kind of like download their app anywhere you want and like start watching their content. Sometimes you have to log in, sometimes you don't, but it's like super easy compared to other countries. And what that means is like you've seen like this really rapid adoption of people just kind of changing their behavior to do this. On top of that, it's cheaper than kind of the alternative of like the kind of pay TV options. So you're just kind of seeing this real big adoption. But now what the broadcasters are saying is actually more than 35% of their viewership is happening on a connected TV device. So not like PCs and mobiles, but on the actual TV device sitting in the living room. They're starting to actually make more and more of their tentpole events available programmatically to buy. So you could literally buy like Olympic ads programmatically if you wanted to, or live ads into like these like big sporting events that you guys have down here. You can do it like real time, targeting the people that you want to target while they're watching the actual live sporting event. So this is again moving away from just like the video on demand to like real like premium events that you can cherry pick your audiences and measure what's happening there and figure out, is it worth it? You know, should I be doing more of that? Like all this kind of cool stuff that opens up when you get the info to do it. These guys are all innovating when it comes to kind of different sales models. So before it was just like, you know, you have to go talk directly to the sales team at these different media owners. Now you can kind of buy them programmatically pretty easily. So, and they're doing all different types of like deals to buy and sell programmatically. You can bring your, like if you've negotiated rates with some of these guys, you can get those honored when you execute programmatically. If you don't have deals with any of these guys, you can just kind of buy them anyways through like the DSP that you're using. So it's pretty easy to access this stuff. And then from their perspective, they're also starting to move into more than just buy this TV show or buy this type of content genre. They're all starting to kind of aggregate the audiences that are using these services and selling you like audience-driven packages. So instead of just buying third-party data, you can now kind of say, hey, publisher, what do you know about your audience? I just kind of want to buy that person no matter what they're watching around your service. So I think they're kind of like trying to really innovate on a technology side, audience side, packaging side, to kind of give you guys what you want versus maybe what you buy from like YouTube. So the cool thing is it's all like super premium, all the kind of checkboxes that you want from like an ad quality perspective. So brand safe, viewable, fraud-free, all that stuff you care about in the digital world, this delivers for you. And actually, when you start to see the results from a campaign performance perspective, it actually performs pretty well too. So kind of a win-win for everybody. But this is kind of happening now when you go work directly with the media owners or publishers, whatever you want to call it. This is happening a lot. I don't know how much of it's happening, but I know when I go talk to like the actual media companies or when I go talk to agencies, like they're doing a lot of these like kind of new direct deals where they're kind of innovating the trade deals that they used to have to kind of include a lot of this stuff outside of just like the linear TV buying they're doing. What's happening now from like kind of, I call them savvy marketers, people are a little bit more on the edge. Sorry for the eye chart here, but the concept is, okay, like I want to be in these TV environments. I want all that kind of ad quality stuff, and I really like the idea of it, but I actually want to like use my digital tactics that I've been doing in the digital world around like really interesting audiences and really interesting measurement. I want to apply that to like this new TV landscape. Obviously these are the guys you know. There's more and more of these OTT environments springing up in every country around the world. These are all the ones that we personally have like private marketplaces with today across the region. So you're seeing like more and more options for consumers to use, and they're all kind of adopting programmatic first mentalities. But from a marketer perspective, you're like, look, what do I know about people? Do I have some information about them from my own kind of DMP or database? Can I go buy some information? There's really cool data providers in Australia now from like Ticketek, REA, Quantium. These guys are all like providing really, really interesting data sets that weren't available before. And you sort of trust you trust where it's coming from a little bit harder. But like you can start to use that in the world of TV. You can use the real-time location stuff in the world of TV. You can take all the information you're collecting from all those digital devices and use that in the TV world. And what you see is like when marketers are now planning campaigns that span all these different touch points, they're just saying, look, I've got my audience. I want to reach them everywhere. I want to measure them everywhere. I can do it. I just have to sort of like change my mentality a little bit, maybe change my client's mentality on like what's important, how to measure it, what's success, all that. But this is kind of like where things are going. globally. So US definitely, but you're seeing this kind of in other markets too, Australia as well. And what you get from like these, when you start to do this on a cross-device level, by the way, I didn't get into cross-device, I didn't want to bore you guys. Just know like there's all these ways to connect all these devices with really high levels of probability. If anybody really wants to chat about it, I'll be here later. I didn't want to bore you. But the concept is like, when you can actually measure this stuff like apples to apples, where my phone and my PC belong to me, loop in like my television, my Xbox, whatever it is, suddenly you can like control frequency. And when you actually start to look at like what the real frequency is on the campaigns you run, where you're doing it silo by silo, you're really oversaturating like people, a small group of people, and you're not getting the ideal frequency that you want. Let's say you want an ideal frequency of 5. Really, you're serving a bunch of people like 20, 25 ads, and then a lot of people are getting underexposed. But when you can kind of frequency cap across all these environments from one platform, you can suddenly get more and more along your ideal frequency line, which means you can get more reach for the same budget, if that's your goal. We'll talk about kind of more performance goals later. But if you just want to get reach and deduplicated reach and get incremental, like you've got to move this way, because like doing it kind of publisher by publisher is a challenge. Okay, I'm going to finish it off. I don't know if am I over time? Okay, 3 minutes. 3 case studies in 3 minutes. Let's go. This is Australia. This is really simple. Like, I'm going to start from simple to more complex. This is I can't name the brand, but they kind of sell stuff to people who are renovating their houses. So a little bit more on the branding side versus like real purchases that you can track easily. But they're like, look, let's start. We do a lot of TV advertising. We do a lot of branding. We want to do it. We want to reach all these people we can't reach in live linear anymore. Let's actually start kind of buying this like TV content everywhere. You see like the majority of it went to like an actual connected TV device, which people can't click on. It's kind of, you can't really measure that stuff the same way you can measure your other digital environments. But actually with this kind of cross-device technology, where you can actually measure like somebody saw an ad on the TV, somebody went to the website 24 hours later, like you can actually tie the dots between those devices to the same person in the same household. Suddenly you can actually measure these like downstream engagements that you couldn't really measure before. So in this case, like, you can actually count deduplicated reach. So you reached 285,000 homes. Super good cost per completed views, if that's what you care about. And you can actually start to measure like page visits. Like of the people that were exposed to TV ad, how many people went there and actually started engaging with the brand and researching the product or whatever, configuring the car, whatever it is. But these are like kind of new info that the agencies had never had an idea about, but something they can prove to their clients that like, actually, TV is actually working and driving engagement, and we can actually start to measure this further and further. When you start to get into like more sales and kind of like more digital engagement from the marketer perspective, you get into things like, well, for Columbia, they make like jumpers and outerwear. Same thing. This is US, not Australia, but you can start to see like what pages the people are going to, what products they're engaging with. Did the ad that you showed to this person, is that what they're researching? Did it work? And then I think this is like a digital streaming app. You've probably used it, but this is like music streaming. But the idea is like, if they want to message people that they know are either customers or not customers, or they were a customer and they're not anymore, they're kind of breaking things up into like customer journey segments and giving people appropriate messaging everywhere based on what they know that person is in this sort of their taxonomy. So a brand new prospect gets one ad, somebody who's lapsed gets another, the person who's actually a subscriber gets nothing everywhere, like all that type of stuff. But what you see is actually like TV impacts all these kind of like real performance metrics really well. And when you can tie it together, you're like, okay, actually I should be buying more TV. Like I may be buying a little less of something else, but generally like TV works and I can now prove it. So it's giving me more confidence to actually invest in this space. But you're seeing kind of like, we've seen this in Korea as well. Like TV seems to work when it comes to getting people to like download apps. Like I don't know what it is. Maybe they're like sitting there with their phone in their hand anyways and they go download it. But you start to kind of get all these use cases where you can start to measure like real engagement and sales, tying it back to the TV spend, where you just can't do it in linear without like super crazy studies and lots of methodologies around around assumptions. So good stuff along all that front. Think TV, BVOD, sequential messaging, showing somebody an ad on the TV and then following it up with them on like a mobile device has a really strong correlation to sales versus Facebook and YouTube. Take that with a grain of salt. It's put out by like the TV industry, but generally like these are high. BVOD is like again full screen, non-skippable, all this good stuff versus like kind of the small ads you see in some of these other environments. So it kind of makes sense that when you actually do sequential messaging here in these kind of premium environments, it's actually gonna have a higher impact on the customer. And lastly, like just to finish it off, manage and optimize the customer journey from TV. You can do sequential messaging, as Gil was saying. This is really becoming like the norm now. It's like show somebody on TV, follow them up with something in maybe a cheaper environment or somewhere along the way until they do what you want them to do. Switch up the ad creative, all that stuff that you want to do from a marketing perspective you can do. And then you should start doing the frequency capping on a cross-device basis. I showed it. It's usually when you start doing this, you realize that like your reach was actually like half of what you thought it was, and your frequency has been higher. And then you can start tracking like real-world metrics against your TV exposure and proving out whether the TV was good or bad. But usually it's showing good, so keep doing it. That's that.